Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another WedNESday. This week we are taking a look at Wacky Races. Now, Wacky Races is a 1992 action game that is a platformer. You might think it was a racing game from the name, but no, it's a platformer which was really kind of normal for the time. It's based on the 1986 cartoon of the same name, Wacky Races. It just kind of goes to show you that even at this point in the Nintendo's life, where they were still kind of pulling at different licenses for ideas for games. So, this game, as it says right here, was released in the US in 1992. It was published by Atlus. Now, just a little bit of trivia here. The music we're listening to right now comes from the Japanese theme for Wacky Races, which I think makes some sense when you take a moment to think about it. This game was originally released in Japan, so you would think they want to use the Japanese version of things, you know, the songs, the music, the sound effects, the characters, that sort of thing. So let's hit start and get into the game. Now I have a lot of notes here, so if I get distracted for a minute, you're gonna know why. Alright, so this is our world map, and it's more or less the actual world we live in. And we have three different routes we can pick from. Hip Hop is being the first one, Splish Splash being the second one, and C being Go Go America. Well, you can see with B, we start in Australia. Australia is way too dangerous of a place to begin our game. So we're going to start up here in Hip Hop. Now, you may be able to see it, but we're that little orange character moving around up there. Alright, let's start with Hip Hop. While chasing a homing pigeon, Dastardly's plane crashes. So I think this is where we should first start, is in this game, we don't get to play any of the heroes from the cartoons. We're instead playing the villains. So we're going to be playing as Muttley, Dick Dastardly Dog. And that's Dick Dastardly right there. And that little pigeon over there is a cameo. I think it was called Dick Dastardly and the Flying Machines, something like that. Where Dick Dastardly was, I think, like a World War I like fighter pilot with his own crew. And they were always trying to catch that pigeon, which was, I think, the name of the theme song, Catch the Pigeon. And I think the pigeon was Yankee Doodle Pigeon. But let's move on a little bit. Muttley grumbles and hurries to rescue Dastardly. Alright, so we are playing Muttley. And we're going to run, jump, and collect stuff. So left and right will move us left and right. Up doesn't do anything, but down can duck. If we hit the A button, we'll do a little jump. And right now, if we hit the B button, Muttley will bite. So we hit the dangerous enemies of a dog, snails. And you can see here, we're collecting gems. So in the style of time, collect 100 gems in a life. But we can also collect bones. And the bones do something interesting. We have almost like a Gradius style options system. So if you look at the bottom, we have the... Actually, let me pause it, because we're going to use up our time. If you look at the bottom, we got our count for diamonds, we got our count for lives. We have how many hearts we have and how much time we have. But in the middle, we have those 4 icons. Right now we're on the bomb icon. As we collect bones, we'll move across those icons in the middle. So like Gradius, it's almost like different options. So if I hit select, we will now switch from biting to throwing bombs. Now, bombs are my preferred weapon of choice in this game. We'll also have the chance to use sort of like a sonic bark. Now, I'm not going to activate it right now. I'm going to grab this other bone. So now we have this sort of feather wing looking icon. And I hit select. Now, Muttley can kind of copter with his tail. Now, first time I played this, I thought it was a one-time only type thing. But no, it will stay with you throughout Muttley's life. So as long as we don't lose a life, Muttley can keep coptering. and that would have been a good time to copter. And that icon right there is a 1-up. Alright, so now we've made it to the heart. If we hit the select button, we gain an extra heart, so we can take a little more damage. I think Muttley can have 6 hearts in total. But once you've collected all your hearts, rather, if you get to that icon again and use that option, you get full health. Alright, so for the moment we're going to switch to his bark. Now, the bark has a little bit of a wind-up on it, but as you can see, it flies across the entire screen, and it is not hindered by objects. I still prefer the bomb, so we're going to switch back to it. One thing I like about the bomb is that when it lands, it creates like an explosion, and that explosion can still damage things. Alright, that was close. I think we only had like 13 seconds left. So we've already seen Dick Dastardly and Muttley. Now, me being the kind of nerd that I am, and thinks he knows something about voice actors, looked up, who did the voices of these characters. Now, both of them are voiced by very famous voice actors, both in the industry in general. No, not over there. But also from the time. So Dick Dastardly was voiced by Paul Winchell, and Muttley over here was Don Messick. Both of them very famous voice actors. So for example, Paul Winchell was the original voice of Gargamel, the original voice of Tigger, and he was also Gargamel from the Smurfs. So this guy was really, not just really famous in early television, radio, and stuff like that. He was like a mechanical genius with a lot of medical training. And he was the first person to develop and patent an artificial heart. So that, like, amazed me. He had several other patents for things as well, like a kind of lighter, some sort of mechanical pen. Oh, little hidden area. Different types of clothing. He was like a real genius of a guy. And Don Messick, also famous voice actor, believe it or not, was the voice of Scooby-Doo. And he was the voice of Scooby-Doo pretty much up until he finished his career sometime in, I think, the early 2000s. He was also famous for being Papa Smurf in the Smurfs. In fact, he was also very, very prolific in Hanna-Barbera cartoons. So he's already done Muttley, he's done Scooby-Doo. He was essentially any animal, or most of them, from Hanna-Barbera cartoons. Alright. That's not going to be the only time I talk about voice actors. And I haven't decided yet if I want to put up pictures of them. But it's now time for our first boss fight. And our first boss fight is with... Well, I should probably pause it. Alright, so here's our first boss fight. And we are fighting the gruesome twosome of Tiny Gruesome and Bella Gruesome. And they are riding around in their creepy coupe. So, in the cartoon, Dawes Butler would be the voice for Tiny Gruesome. Now, Dawes Butler, another tremendously famous actor. In fact, I looked him up getting prepared for this video. He is the voice of nearly every major Hanna-Barbera character there is. So, for example, he was the voice of Yogi Bear, Huckleberry Hound, Quick Draw McGraw. If there was a Hanna-Barbera protagonist, there's a good chance Dawes Butler was the voice of him. And what I was not aware of, and I thought was kind of interesting, he was also the voice of Captain Crunch. And he voiced the character from the 60s well into the 80s. And Bella Gruesome over here is voiced by Don Messick. We've talked about him already. So I think it's kind of interesting here that the protagonists from the cartoon and their vehicles become the bosses that you get to fight. And they come in 2 waves. So we've already taken care of their first wave. Oh, I did say that that was the Creepy Coop, didn't I? Yeah. So we beat them and we move on to area A2. And in this area, you've got like sand traps and ant lions hiding in them. And if we fall into the sand, it's not an instant death, but we will slowly get sucked underneath. Now, to the best of my knowledge, there aren't any hidden areas or anything like that in the sand, but it is a good way to sort of get the drop on enemies by going a little lower into the sand. Alright, so at this point, I do believe we are at our max health. But now if I use this heart option again, we'll get our health restored. Okay, we can drop down through platforms, which I didn't use a lot, but we can do it. So here's another good spot to use our helicopter tail. So we want to get that one up, and some of these crystals. And if we get the bone, we just go back to the beginning of the option. So my first time playing through this, like I said, I thought we could only use that tail helicopter once. So I made life a lot harder for me than it needed to be. Alright, another thing about this game. Muttley here will occasionally have sprite changes depending on the damage he takes. Like right there, you just saw he winced. But if... and there he is, he's doing his iconic laugh. I used to be pretty good at doing an impression of that laugh, but not so much anymore. But if, for example, he gets burnt, he very quickly flashes as if he's singed. Maybe a couple more times stuff like that will happen. Now this whole area gives me a kind of Mario Bros. 3 vibe to it. With the pipes and the fire jumping at us. Alright, so I guess we're at some sort of Mesoamerican temple. But even though it's Mesoamerican, I think it's Mesoamerican, isn't it? We're not going through... Yeah, we are going through Africa, not South America. We got these pharaoh heads that look suspiciously similar to Homer Simpson to me. I don't know if they're supposed to be Homer, but they just kind of give me that impression. Oh, careful. There are going to be things that drop from the ceiling on us, especially in this area. But I'm going to want to get hit by at least one of them. Okay, let's fill up our life. And that statue's head is jumping up and down, so we want to be careful of it. There's another Homer head. Ouch. So, I didn't know this, but we can jump up here and kind of Mario Brothers our way past every obstacle up here. But we end up missing out on all that treasure and all those goodies. Okay, so I wanted to get hit by that one so we could see Muttley get flattened like a pancake. Now, let's just go over here. And it's not boss fight time yet. Now, I believe every boss fight will have at least one bone. So, either get to the boss fight with your option on the hearts, or or just before the heart. Alright, so it's boss fight time. And this is Sergeant Blast and Private Muttley in their armored tank called the Army Surplus Special. Now, Dawes Butler here plays Blast, who is the larger guy in the back of the tank, and Paul Winchell is Muttley, who's the smaller guy up front. This is kind of an easy fight once you realize that they'll only go so far forward, and you can kind of attack them from the sand, which will keep you safe from a lot of their attacks. Not all of their attacks, but a lot of them. Okay, time to heal. And got him. So we busted up their tank, and the sergeant lost his shirt. Okay, so now we're further south into Africa, and we're being attacked by giant emus, the worst enemies of them all. Donkey Kong has shown up. Always nice when he makes a cameo. Alright, helicopter tail over there. Let's try to avoid that rather large bird. Oh, snake. So a lot of these jumps can be made without the helicopter tail, which I found out the hard way. But if you have the helicopter tail, well, that just makes your life so much easier. So I don't know what that's supposed to be. I don't know if it's supposed to be some sort of armadillo, rhinoceros, some sort of spiky boy. But we can't hurt him, at least not with our bombs. Maybe our bark could, but we don't have our bark. I gotta tell you, my first time playing through this, and not realizing how the tail worked, some of these jumps were a little nerve-wracking. Alright, not boss fight time yet. Getting close, though. And look at that, we're doing really good. We got 11 lives. So I think that was something about the design philosophy behind these older games. Was sort of rewarding the player with more playtime, the better and better they did, in the way of giving you more lives. So you have more chances to make mistakes, more chances to screw up. So the better you got at the game, the better you were rewarded for it. You were less likely to screw up as a result, but you were also rewarded more for not screwing up. Okay, I really don't want to get that other bone, but maybe we can get one more before we get to the boss. These little white monkeys over here causing trouble. Now, I think I could go back and get a bone if I wanted to. We're going to keep moving forward. Alright. Oh, okay, it's not a boss. More temples, that's good. Because really, if I can avoid it, I do not want to take on the boss with less than full health. If we can get another option in reserve, that'd be great too. Nope. Alright, so here's our boss here. This is Rufus Roughcut and his beaver friend Sawtooth. And they are in the Buzzwagon, which is like just a big car made out of logs with a buzzsaw for wheels. and I am not doing very good because I'm trying to talk while fighting with them. So, Dawes Butler would be the voice of Rufus, which is the rather large gentleman driving the vehicle. And Don Messick is Sawtooth. Ah, alright, so they got us. But we get to start right at the fight. And I think we're going to do a little better this time. So a lot of it is just kind of getting their patterns. So they'll have their pattern for their first phase, and then they'll have their pattern for their second phase. Neither phase is really all that long. So the fights are kind of quick. They're not punishing, but you do want to sort of learn the patterns, because they can be tougher or easier depending on how you react to them moving around. Like with this guy, I'm mostly safe just sitting in that corner. Alright, we did it. Alright, Muttley saves Dastardly, only to be yelled at. Muttley, catch that bird or else! It's no dinner for you! I always get stuck doing all the dirty work. Alright, so we've finished hip-hop. And again, Australia, too dangerous. Don't go there first. Don't go there second. We're going to do Go Go America, which is the longest route. It has 4 stages in it instead of 3. I'm just going to roll down my notes here a little bit. Alright, Dastardly tries to head off the other racers and is captured by desperados. Muttley, help me! If Muttley doesn't hurry, they will surely finish in last place. Muttley groans and sets off to save Dastardly. Alright, so we start here in the Great White North. Now, remember, we lost a life in the last stage, so we do not have our helicopter tail anymore. But now we do. So, we're up, I think, towards Alaska, the northern part of Canada. Dealing with Inuits and snowmen's and walrus. I think there's a snow bear. Snow bear. I think there's a polar bear here somewhere too. Snow bear. Is that the character from We Bare Bears? Or is he Ice Bear? I think he was Ice Bear. Alright, so we made it from the ice to the clouds. And Muttley is sort of just bouncing around on his own. I think we can jump a little higher if I time it. No. So, of course, since we're up in the clouds, there are slugs and birds. It makes sense. Don't say it doesn't. Also cannons. I do not know if any of these enemies are pulled from episodes of Wacky Races or any other Hanna-Barbera cartoons. I don't even know if they were really made in that style. Like the polar bear feels like it could have been. Don't know why I'm throwing bombs at the cannon. It doesn't work. We're gonna let that bone alone. Did get that one up, so that's good. Alright, and it is boss fight time, and I believe this is Red Max in his plane called the Crimson Hay Baler. He is also voiced by Dawes Butler. So I think we're going to be okay fighting with him. As long as I don't keep doing stupid things like that. Alright, phase 1 is done. Phase 2. Now again, I'm trying to avoid getting the bone. Because I want to I wanted to stay on the option to heal. So, it actually is probably easier like this, because then we can use the platform in the center to help maneuver. Okay, so now we're making our way into the US. At least a nice part of the US, it looks like. And there is a Muttley robot. That has to come from the cartoon. There has to be an example of when Muttley got turned into a robot. It's like a common trope. You know, your robot doppelganger. Although it's usually the heroes that have to deal with their robot doppelganger. Less often the villains. And of course there are wild pigs. Ah! Didn't copter in time. Alright. Well, we've already got our first option. So we can get our bomb back. We do keep all our health, so that's good. I wonder if that would have made the game more challenging, as if we lost a life, we also lost all our extra hearts. I think I'm glad that they did not go that route. But it is something that makes me wonder. Because there are more than enough bones. Rabbits on pogo sticks. We're in the New York, I say the New York nightlife, but I don't know that for a fact. Maybe we're in Detroit or Chicago or something. So the platforming here... I did it again. I am not doing good with my my helicopter spinning. We're going to get that first, because that's going to be a little more important in this area. There's our bomb. This does have fairly generous checkpoint systems. But we haven't really needed to use them just yet. Or am I thinking... the stages aren't that long in the first place. I might have been thinking of a different game, actually, when it comes to the checkpoints. I play so many of these games for WedNESday, they sometimes blur together. Okay, I think we can get that without getting the bone. Alright, it's time for our next boss fight, and this is the Anthill Mob. Now, I often call them the Anthill Gang. That's not right. They're the Anthill Mob. And they're sort of like a group of, like, 1920s gangsters who are all very tiny. But despite being, like, gangsters, they're actually kind of more like good guys. They drive around in the bulletproof bomb. Now, I think there's 7 or 8 of the mob here. And the leader of the mob is Clyde. And he is voiced by Paul Winchell. I could not get information for the voice actors of all the other members, but one of them, Ring-a-Ding, was voiced by Don Messick, so I wouldn't be surprised if voice acting duty for all of the Anthill Gang was divided between the two of them. Now, the Anthill Gang were of course in Wacky Races as some of the contestants, but they would also show up in other Hanna-Barbera cartoons, notably the cartoon The Perils of Penelope Pitstop, where they'd be sort of like the 7 dwarfs to her Snow White. And we'll talk more about Penelope Pitstop when we get a little further into the game. Alright, raccoons, because raccoons wear masks, that makes them bandits. Big purple taper. Now, you may remember watching me play Cocoron, where we were like a kid having a dream, and a magical taper kind of came to us and asked to help save Dreamland. But in reality, the taper was just trying to take over Dreamland himself. Which I think is another one of those Japanese myth and legends kinds of things. So that makes me wonder, were there tapers in Japan? I associate them more with South America, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. Alright, minecart level. I want to be careful of these boulders. And I think the boulders will respawn, so be careful. And more slug enemies. Because what enemy is more appropriate in a mine than a slug? The boulders mostly aren't that bad. There are going to be times where you want to be careful. You don't always have as much room to work with as you might think to avoid those things. There's a good example. That is one of the drawbacks of the bomb. It will explode on contact with, say, the ceiling and stuff. Alright, we can either get one more bone. Oh, we got smushed. And the boulder's back. Alright, boss fight time. Alright, this is Lazy Luke and his bear buddy Blubber Bear. And they are in the Arkansas Chugabug, which I think is just a great name for a, like, their kind of homemade gin-fueled, like, vehicle here. Now, both of these characters are voiced by John Stephenson. Now, he at first was one of those names I didn't really recognize, but as I did research for him, wow, he was another really prolific guy, especially at Hanna-Barbera, doing lots of additional voices and stuff. Now, he is probably most famous for the voice of Mr. Slate from the Flintstones. But as I went through his, what do you want to call it, voiceography? The voices that I saw him doing, like, just tickled me. Like, he is one of my favorite Transformers. He is Cup from the Transformers movie and TV series, and I just love his war stories. Now, these kind of mean a little bit to me. So, for example, he was Professor Xavier in the X-Men pilot Pride of the X-Men, which was an attempt at an X-Men cartoon even before X-Men the Animated Series. And he was also the voice of Captain Murphy in C-Lab 2020. Not C-Lab 2021, but the very original C-Lab. Alright, so that was our boss fight with them. We are now even further into South America. And since we lost a life fighting that last boss, we need to restore our wing. So we got Moa heads here. Now I'm saying they're Moa heads, but I don't know that to be the actual case. I know Moa heads. I know Moa heads from stuff like, well, Gradius, which we talked about earlier. Oh, little bear trap. That bear trap we cannot damage or destroy. Okay. Got our tail back. Got our bombs. And we're about to get a 1-up. Provided I don't die. So I've made a lot of jokes about how dangerous Australia is, and when we get to it, you'll see that it is a pretty dangerous stage. But this part of this route, or rather this route overall, is on the tougher side. Not so, oh. I was gonna say not so much this area particularly, but you can see that's not the case. I lost life. Alright, let's move along. Moa heads jump really well. Samurai Jack would be proud. Okay, let's restore our life. So while I'm sitting here thinking of things to say, I don't think I've mentioned just how important some of these voice actors really were. Now, of course, I've mentioned how Paul Winchell was a prolific inventor in addition to all his other work, and created life-saving things like an artificial heart. But most of the actors come from the early days of Hollywood, in both film, television, and radio. So several of these people were ventriloquists, which I guess is kind of why they got picked to do this voice acting, because they were already doing characters. Let's heal up our health. They were famous in film and TV. They were famous in radio. Now, in my research, I didn't see any, like, major roles that I could point to any of them, because I've mostly focused on their voice acting, but they were all over the place in TV and radio. Ah, I did it again. So yeah, this may be one of the harder areas in the entire game. And it was especially tough before I realized how important the tailcopter was. Alright, well I think that's enough gushing over voice actors. I do have a lot of interest and a lot of respect for the profession, so I kind of want to try to be as knowledgeable about it as possible. And I want to share that information and passion with those of you who are willing to watch these videos. Oh, you naughty fish. Alright, let's fill up our life. I think we are very close to the end. And I'd rather not die again, if I can avoid it. Yeah, those fish. Oh, and that bird. Okay, let's grab that bone. And it's time for our next boss fight. Now these are the Slag Brothers, Rock and Gravel. They're kind of Captain Caveman-ish looking characters. And they are voiced... Hang on. Gotta look at my notes here. Rock is voiced by Dawes Butler, and Gravel is voiced by Don Messick, and they are in the Bouldermobile. Now, for the most part, they stay over there on the right side of the screen. But now they're in their second phase, and they are going to move around a bit more. And they're going to be firing their clubs at us. I am not doing very good. Maybe now I can do a little bit better, that I'm not distracted by talking about voice actors. So you can see they're firing, let's just call them rocks. They're firing rocks at us. Might be cannonballs. But when they get to phase 2, that's when they're going to move more left and right, and they're also going to be firing their clubs at us. So their pattern isn't really that bad. I am just not doing very good. I keep firing the wrong direction. Alright. Let's stop messing around. So they move back and forth twice, firing rocks at us. Then they will jump across the screen. Alright, so now in their second form, they will start by firing their club at us. Then they will jump across the screen twice. See, now I'm doing much better. And we did it. They are defeated. And just bonk on the head. Now what? You've got caught 2 drats and double drats. Thanks to you, we've come in last place. Stop that dumbfounded laughing. Alright, so we've got no choice now. We gotta go to Australia. Dastardly's mean machine suddenly breaks down. Rats! The engine conked out. Muttley, go find a new engine immediately! Muttley mumbles and sets out to find a new engine. Alright, so we got our bombs. We do not have our copter tail. So we are going to have to make a couple of risky jumps. Now there's Mr. Rossetti visiting from Mario Brothers. Or maybe it's Monty Mole. I don't know. What do you think? So I keep joking about Australia being so dangerous. Part of that is because of the number of kind of difficult, not difficult, but the number of jumps that seem intimidating if you don't have the tailcopter. And then when we get to the next area, you're gonna see how really difficult this can get if you don't have the tailcopter. Dangerous frogs, giant mosquitoes. Alright. This is taking me a little longer than I thought. I think we're around 40 minutes right now. I was hoping to be done in about half an hour. But that's alright. Okay, so for example, there's that orca. That orca can be an issue. And that orca will show up several times during the stage. I don't believe I missed that. So yeah, we got an orca. The orca gives us problems. We got all kinds of jumping. Giant octopus. So we're still in Australia. But now we're going across some sort of bridge. I do not know what this bridge is, or if there's any famous bridges in Australia. I was told that there's the Sydney Harbour Bridge, so maybe that's what this is supposed to be. And oh boy, look at this. How are we going to make that jump? Well, again, before I knew that about the tailcopter, I had to bounce off of the orca. Alright, we are losing lives. Try not to keep doing that. See? But now we got our tailcopter back. We should be okay. These jumps shouldn't be so bad anymore. Octopus is still a problem, though. Jump down. No, no, Crow, leave us alone. Oh, I'm doing so bad. Let's try not to keep losing all our lives over here. Okay, there's a bone up there, so that will help us. If I can get to it. Alright. So now we can take the high road, avoid a lot of these problems. Restore our health. Alright, I'm hoping it's going to be smooth sailing from this point. So much for smooth sailing. I hope this doesn't become one of those times where I have to, like, edit forward because it ends up taking too long. But this is why I was joking about Australia just being way too dangerous. Probably could have coptered it all the way over there. Oh, not this time. Can't let the orca get us again. Ah, not this time. Alright, and it's boss fight time. We are fighting against Peter Perfect in his Turbo Terrific. And he was also voiced by Dawes Butler. Now, I may have discussed this in other videos where I talked about voice actors. From what I understand is whenever a voice actor was doing a TV show, around this time, and even a little later, they were guaranteed a number of voices. I don't know what that number is. It may have been different from show to show. So that may be why we see, like, one voice actor doing, like, 5 or 6 voices in one show. Now, we are on Peter's second phase here, so hopefully we can get him beat before we run out of life. I'm not going to do that if that keeps happening. There we go. So things are going to get significantly easier here, but we're now out in the middle of the ocean and things are a little different. So we can ascend or descend by pressing up or down. We still go left or right with left or right. I believe if we hit the jump button, we'll swim a little faster. Now this area can be a little on the tricky side, because there's so many corridors, and our bomb kind of flies up in an arc. So we may try to attack an enemy, but just end up hitting the wall above us. Now, thankfully, Muttley can hold his breath indefinitely, or maybe he's just, you know, dogfish, and he can breathe underwater. Now, I've already mentioned other parts of the game have given me Mario Brothers vibes, and you would think this area gives me those same feelings, but you know, I gotta say they don't. I don't really get the underwater level from Mario Brothers feeling from this part of the game, even though you would think I would. Although for some reason the boat environment makes me think of Little Mermaid. If you saw me play that. Let's heal. That was a good example of, you know, the wall or the ceiling above you kind of preventing you from hitting an enemy. Now, you might think, since so much of this is straightaways, the sonic bark would be a bit better. And I've tried that, but it didn't really come off that way to me. I think it's just that there's too much delay between the bark and the attack starting. Not doing great. But we are done with this area, and it's time for our next boss fight, which I think is probably one of the easier boss fights in the game, which I say as I start to get trounced. And this is Professor Pat Pending and his Converticar, who is also voiced by Don Messick. So right now he's just sort of bouncing around and stomping on us if he goes over us. His second form here, or his second stage here, is going to be mostly the bouncing around, but he'll stop to take 2 shots at us. Which honestly isn't that bad, but it does kind of make him a little harder to hit, because he spends so much time like way up above where we could hit him. And as long as we keep moving, his cannons, we'll say, will have a hard time hitting us. Okay, last part of the game. So, yeah, we're in Eastern Asia, and it's covered in candy. Not quite sure what they were going for here. But it's also full of bugs, so don't eat the candy. Now, I'm pretty sure in the manual, it calls this area something like the Candy Land or the Candy Islands, something like that. But I'm pretty sure we're on the mainland now. We're not out in the islands. Now, the jumps here are not as intimidating as maybe some of them in Australia was, but you can see here just how much easier things become when you can tailcopter. Ah. Alright, back to the beginning. Again, it's not, the stages aren't that long, so not that much of a hindrance to get knocked back to the beginning. Though I do think we want to stay high here. So the roaches, pretty bad enemies. But those dragonflies, they are trouble. Ah, we missed out on the tail. I screwed that one up. We'll have another chance soon, though. Real soon, actually. We just need one bone. Ah, see? Alright, let's not screw up this time. I know I'm asking for a lot. Yeah, see how much easier that is with the tailcopter? Although, that happened. Alright, so we're gonna make it this time? Yes. Okay, wanna be careful that we don't end up dying. Alright, we made it this far last time. We get a 1-up for our trouble. Okay, we're not out of the Candy Lands yet. So we're slowly making our way through Asia up towards Japan. And we of course got to go through all these weirdo lands. Look at that jump. Imagine that jump without the tail. Roach. Alright, but we've caught up on some of our lives. I'm just going to take the high road through here. Because here we are at the end. Alright, and our very last fight is with Penelope Pitstop. And she is in the Compact Pussycat. She's actually probably the easiest fight, despite, at least in the path we've taken, being the last one. Now, Penelope Pitstop here is voiced by Janet Waldo. She is probably most famous known for voicing Judy Jetson in the Jetsons cartoon, and kept voicing her until the 2000s. In addition to Judy Jetson, she was almost every female character you could have heard in a Hanna-Barbera cartoon. So, for example, she was Josie from Josie and the Pussycats. But what kind of struck me a little bit was if you're a Gotcha Man fan, or Battle of the Planets, she was June the Swan or princess. Alright, now hopefully we can beat her this time. Because I have just been doing rubbish. Here I was saying she's probably one of the easier fights. So, she is the last boss. We fight her in Japan because, of course, every waifu belongs to Japan. And if you're one of those people that has Penelope Pitstop as a waifu, let me just say, you know, right on, man. That's a classic one. Old school for life. Alright. Form 1, or Phase 1, finished. Jumped right into that one. Alright, time for Phase 2. Another benefit of the bomb is that a lot of times, even if we miss her, there's a good chance she'll land on the explosion. Wow, how many lives have I lost fighting her? Like 5? I just sit there and took those. That was awful. Okay, I think we're starting to get it. Well, I hope you're enjoying this epic boss fight at the end of the game. And we did it. Her card is not getting nearly as messed up as the others. But that's it. I'm knocking everything around. Hey, I said to get an engine. What are we going to do with a boat mast? There's no time for your silly laughing. We're stuck in last place. And there we go. That is Wacky Races for the Nintendo Entertainment System. So despite doing really, really bad in this playthrough, it's a pretty fun, pretty simple little game. I should have been done with it in half the time, though. So what can I say about it? Well, I can say that I hope you enjoyed it. It's a lot like platformers of the time. Although it's a little unusual that we would get to play the antagonists of all things, instead of the protagonists. I don't know, maybe Dick, Dastardly, and Muttley were a little more popular over in Japan. The kind of option system from Gradius, I shouldn't say it came from Gradius, but you know, that's where my mind goes to, was a nice touch. An interesting way to use the power-ups in the game, and sort of give you like a little buffer zone if you're careful with your options. So that is going to do it for this game. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for watching. Yes, the trophy is all mine! We'll see. I'm gonna snort and snicker. Drat! Why does this always happen?